Yesterday, I talked about the 60-40. 60% focus on fluency, 40% focus on accuracy. Step into the conversation and then keep pushing. And I want to believe that landed for most of you. I want to believe you watched that video, felt something shift, and thought, okay, I'm going to try that job opportunity. I'm going to try that networking event. But I also know that for some of you, maybe a lot of you, there's something else happening. Something underneath the underestimation that we didn't talk about yesterday. You're not just afraid of failing. You feel like a fraud. Not, I'm not ready yet. Not, I need more practice. But something deeper. Something that says, even when it goes well, it doesn't feel real. Even when people respond to your English naturally and positively, that voice is still there. Quiet, persistent. You're not actually fluent. You just got through it. If they really tested you, you would fall apart. You don't deserve to be here. That feeling has a name. And today, I want to talk about it properly. Where it comes from, why it's lying to you, and how my own story with it ended. But I also want to be honest with you about something the feel-good version of this conversation always leaves out. Because the fraud feeling and complacency are two very different problems. And I refuse to fix one by accidentally enabling the other. So, let's go. When you feel like a fraud in English, two separate things are happening simultaneously, and they feed each other, but they have different causes and they need different responses. The first is called imposter syndrome. It describes a pattern where a person, despite genuine competence, despite real evidence of their abilities, persistently feels like they don't deserve to be where they are, like they got here by accident, like they're about to be found out or discovered. Imposter syndrome was originally studied in high-achieving professionals, doctors, scientists, executives, people who had every objective reason to feel confident and still didn't. Language learners experience it constantly as well. You have a great conversation and think, that was easy. What if the next conversation is harder? You get a compliment on your English and think, they're just being polite. You pass an exam and think, I must have gotten lucky. The evidence of your competence is right there, and your brain dismisses it every single time. The second thing is what I call the fluency illusion. Fluency feels completely different from the inside than it looks from the outside. When you watch someone speak fluently, effortlessly, naturally, you are seeing the output of that person. You are not hearing the micro hesitations they smoothed over internally. You are not seeing the split-second word searches. You're not feeling the mild uncertainty about whether that phrase was exactly right. You're just seeing the result, and it looks easy. So when you compare that external image of fluency to your internal experience, effortful, uncertain, imperfect, of course you feel like you're not there yet. But here's what nobody tells you. Listen closely. The effortless speaker you watch, they feel exactly what you feel on the inside. You are comparing your own internal experience to other people's external performance, and that comparison will always make you feel inadequate because it was never a fair comparison anyway. Now, before I tell you my story, I need to say something clearly. Something I did not say yesterday, but that belongs here in this video, in this conversation. The fraud feeling is lying to you about where you currently are. But it is not entirely wrong about one thing. There's still work to do. There will always be. And if the only thing this video does is make you feel better about your current level without pushing you to keep growing, then I haven't done my job. Yesterday, I talked about the 60-40 ratio, 60% focus on fluency, 40% focus on accuracy. I want to stay with that for a moment because it's directly connected to that fraud feeling we've been discussing today. Here is something I've noticed over 20 years of teaching. The learners who feel most like frauds are almost never the ones who are worst at English. They are very often the ones who are most aware, the most reflective, the most honest about the gap between where they are and where they want to be. That awareness, that sensitivity to your own imprecision is not a weakness. It is the 40% doing its job. The problem is when it takes over, when the 40% starts running the 60% decisions, when the drive for accuracy becomes the reason you never step into the conversation in the first place. That's the fraud feeling out of balance. Too much accuracy consciousness, not enough fluency courage. The goal isn't to silence the 40%. It's to put it back in its proper place. In the conversation, in real life, 60% leads. Focus on fluency. You move, you communicate, you stay present. After the conversation, the 40% accuracy gets its turn. You reflect, you notice, you improve. The fraud feeling becomes a problem when you let the 40% run the show before you've even opened your mouth. And I know this from experience, not from a textbook, from a specific afternoon at a drugstore. A conversation that was 5 minutes long and changed the way I understood myself as a speaker of English forever. Quick word before my story though. The fraud feeling gets quieter the more you practice in real pressure-tested situations. The B2Edge app has an AI speaking coach built for exactly this. Real conversational scenarios where the 60% gets exercised, and also precise feedback where the 40% gets fed. So if you want to learn more about how you can balance this focus on fluency and accuracy when developing your English, link in the description. The app can be a great companion for that purpose. For the first 5 years of learning English, I was pretty much alone with the language. Borrowed grammar books, a notebook, movies, songs, as much English as I could get my hands on, but almost entirely by myself. Studying, consuming, practicing, but not really speaking, not to real people in real situations at least. And the fraud voice in those years was very loud, very loud. I would hear things like, you think you speak English, Thiago? Come on, you've never had a real conversation. You've been practicing in your room alone. That doesn't count. You're not fluent. You don't speak English. I was working at a drugstore at the time, and one afternoon, an American woman came in, a tourist. She was looking for something specific, and she didn't speak my language, Portuguese. For a fraction of a second, I froze. All those hours of study, all those films, all those rehearsed phrases. And in that fraction of a second, the fraud voice was right there, loud as ever. This is the real thing. You're not ready. You're going to embarrass yourself. But I opened my mouth anyway. I helped her find what she needed, the products she was looking for. And then, I don't know where it came from, I started a conversation. I asked her questions, questions that I had practiced alone before. I answered her questions with the phrases I had rehearsed. She answered, I understood, I answered again. The conversation lasted about 5 minutes. It was really short. But when she walked away, I stood there behind the counter, completely still. And I thought, wow, I just had a full conversation with a native speaker, and it was great. Was it perfect? No. Did I forget words? Yes. Was there a moment where I paused and searched for words? Absolutely. But I got through it, and she got through it with me. And what I felt in that moment wasn't fluency, not yet. It was confirmation. Confirmation. It was confirmation that the work I was doing was working, that I was on the right path, that it was just a matter of time, as long as I kept studying, practicing, and kept exposing myself to English every single day, I would get fluent someday. The fraud voice started to get quieter that afternoon, not because I decided I was fluent, but because I had real evidence, undeniable, personal, embodied evidence that the effort was paying off. And that evidence didn't make me want to stop. It made me want to go harder with my studies and my practice. Here's what I know now, after 25 years on both sides of this, as a learner and as a teacher. Fluency is not a feeling, and it's not a destination. It's a practice. Even truly fluent speakers, C1, C2 levels, and native speakers still work on their language. Writers obsess over word choice. Speakers study rhetoric. Professionals refine their message and their ideas. The notion that you reach a level where growth stops, that level doesn't exist. What changes as you develop is not the need to improve. What changes is your relationship with the imperfection and also with the process. A fluent speaker doesn't interpret effort as failure. They stay in the conversation, the 60%, remember? And then they go back and close the gaps, which is the 40%, not as punishment, as craft. So here's what I'm asking of you. Stop letting the fraud feeling keep you out of conversations. That is the lie, and it is costing you real opportunities. And stop letting the absence of the fraud feeling also become an excuse to stop growing. The learners who become truly excellent are the ones who stay hungry even after the fear subsides. Your drugstore moment, the conversation that proves the fraud voice wrong, it's one decision away. And when that conversation ends, don't just feel relieved, feel more hungry. And ask what worked, ask what didn't work, close the gap, show up again, and better. If you feel like a fraud speaking English, if you feel like an imposter speaking English, don't. That feeling is lying to you about where you currently are, about what your English is already capable of. But that voice is also right about one thing. There is still work to do. Truth one, you are further along than you think. The fraud feeling is mismeasuring you. So step forward. Your English is already great. But truth two, stepping forward is not the finish line. It is where the real work begins. The 60% gets you into the room. The 40% is what builds the person you become inside the room. Those two truths are not in conflict. They are the engine of progress for B2, C1, and C2 level learners. The confirmation you need that you are on the right track, that the work is working, that is waiting for you on the other side of a conversation you haven't had yet. Not when you feel ready. Now. If you want a structured place to put both truths into practice, the B2 Edge app is where I would send you. Real conversational pressure to exercise fluency, plus real feedback to develop accuracy. Both together in one place. Link in the description. And this week, one conversation. Remember, anyone, anything, not perfect, just real. Aim for having a conversation this week with someone or with my app. When it's over, don't just feel relieved. Ask yourself, what worked? What didn't work? What's one thing I can sharpen for next time? That's the 60-40 in action. Remember, courage in the doing, growth in the learning. So, thank you very much for hanging out with me today. I'm Thiago, and if you want to keep learning more, I highly recommend you check out this video next. I'll see you in the next one.